the morning of March 20th, 1995, thousands of Tokyo commuters stepped onto their usual subway trains. None of them knew that, in just a few minutes, a clear, almost invisible mist would drift across the train floors, and history would never be the same. Passengers began collapsing, convulsing, choking, and clawing at the air. Dozens were dying, thousands were being poisoned, and as chaos erupted across Tokyo, one name appeared again and again. Aum Shinrikyo, a Japanese religious movement built on yoga classes, science fiction, biblical prophecy, and the visions of one man who claimed he was Christ himself. But the sarin gas attack that shocked the world? That was only the end of the story. Because before Aum unleashed chemical weapons in the busiest city on Earth, they had already kidnapped lawyers, murdered critics, carried out secret bioweapons experiments, and attempted to create their own private army. This is the story of a cult that grew from a tiny yoga class in 1984 to one of the most dangerous doomsday movements the modern world has ever seen. A story of mind control, psychological warfare, prophecy, science fiction, terrorism, and the unbelievable path that led to the Tokyo subway attack. Before Aum Shinrikyo became a household name, before chemical weapons and assassinations and doomsday prophecies, it was just a small yoga school. In February 1984, in Tokyo's Shibuya district, a partially blind man named Chizuo Matsumoto, who later renamed himself Shoko Asahara, opened a spiritual practice called Umu Shinsen no Kai Aum Heavenly Sage Association. The teachings were a mix of yoga, meditation, and esoteric spiritual development. But Asahara had something most fringe gurus didn't: charisma and an uncanny ability to recruit highly educated people. By 1989, Aum had grown so rapidly that the Japanese government granted it official religious status. This wasn't some street corner cult. This was, as the media later called it, a religion for the elite. University graduates, scientists, engineers, government bureaucrats, even members of the Japanese self-defense forces joined. Aum was no longer a yoga school. It was becoming a movement. By the late 1980s, Aum Shinrikyo no longer resembled the yoga club it once was. Inside its walls, a transformation was underway. Quiet at first, almost invisible. A young university graduate might enter an Aum dojo expecting meditation and philosophical debate, but they would soon be introduced to a world where science fiction, religion, and apocalypse blended into one. The cult had mastered the art of recruitment. They printed glossy manga magazines with stylized cosmic battles and heroic sages wielding spiritual weapons. They animated cartoons showing Aum's teachings playing out like epic space operas. And for a generation raised on anime, this wasn't ridiculous. It was captivating. Asahara knew his audience. He referenced Isaac Asimov's Foundation trilogy, stories about brilliant scientists preserving civilization in secrecy. Aum members saw themselves as the chosen few, the enlightened elite preparing for a coming collapse. Aum's magazines preached salvation in 3 steps. 1. Cure your illnesses. 2. Increase your intelligence. 3. Awaken your true purpose, all through ancient teachings, meditation, and devotion to Asahara. Young recruits felt they were stepping into a heroic mission, but once inside, the world became much smaller, contacts were cut off, sleep deprivation began. Ascetic practices turned into psychological control. Initiation rituals used LSD and sensory manipulation disguised as enlightenment, and Asahara's teachings evolved. A nuclear apocalypse was coming, he said, instigated by Jewish financiers, Freemasons, and the United States. The beast. The world would end. But Aum would survive. His voice grew louder, his followers grew more obedient, and outside the cult, families grew desperate. Parents reported their children missing. Former members said they had been held against their will. Others claimed Aum demanded massive financial donations and controlled every aspect of their lives. Journalists reported strange activities in the cult's compounds, locked rooms, night drills, hushed ceremonies. By 1989, suspicion had become national concern, and one man decided to fight back. His name was Tsutsumi Sakamoto, a 33-year-old attorney specializing in human rights and cult abuse cases. He was charismatic, sharp, and fearless, and he agreed to represent families whose loved ones had been absorbed into Aum. Sakamoto had already won major cases against dangerous religious groups. Aum was next. He began gathering evidence. He interviewed former members. He documented Aum's financial abuse and physical mistreatment, and he prepared a lawsuit that could strip Aum of its religious status and bankrupt them. To Asahara, this wasn't just a threat, it was an existential enemy. In October 1989, Sakamoto recorded an explosive interview with the TV network TBS. He laid out Aum's abuses. He accused them of coercion, of violence, of fraud. Before airing the segment, TBS producers, seeking balance, made a catastrophic mistake. They secretly showed the unaired interview to Aum leaders, without telling Sakamoto. The cult exploded in anger. They pressured the network to cancel the broadcast, and TBS complied. But by then, Aum had already made their decision. Sakamoto had to be eliminated. Just after midnight, a team of Aum members broke into the Sakamoto family's Yokohama apartment. Inside were Tsutsumi Sakamoto, his wife, Kazuko, their 14-month-old son, Tatsuhiko. What happened next was swift, silent, and brutal. The family was murdered. Their bodies were taken away, stripped of identifying items, and dumped in separate remote locations across Japan, not to be found for 6 years. The next morning, neighbors reported the apartment eerily quiet. The police found no signs of struggle. Not yet understanding Aum's ruthlessness, investigators initially suspected the family had run away. The case went cold. But in Japan's legal world, Sakamoto's colleagues knew. Many publicly accused Aum of involvement. But without evidence, there was nothing anyone could do. Aum had silenced their greatest threat, and the government had no idea how far the cult was now willing to go. This was the moment Aum crossed a line it would never step back from. Violence was no longer a last resort. It was a tool, a strategic way to defend the guru's vision. Inside Aum compounds, the murder was celebrated as a divine act. Fowa, Asahara claimed, the transfer of souls to save them from bad karma. In reality, it was a test. Could Aum kill without consequence, operate like a clandestine army? Could they cover their tracks? The answer, chillingly, was yes. Sakamoto's disappearance emboldened Asahara. It convinced him he was protected, by law, by secrecy, and by the unwavering devotion of his followers. From here, the cult would accelerate. They would pursue weapons, chemicals, biological agents, and within 5 years, the world would witness what that confidence would unleash. By the early 1990s, Aum Shinrikyo had become a strange hybrid, part religion, part corporation, part paramilitary cult. They were no longer satisfied with mystical rituals or philosophical sermons. Asahara envisioned something far greater. Aum would become a sovereign power, with weapons to match. This is the story of how a Japanese cult, hidden in the mountains, disguised as a spiritual movement, began building an arsenal for the end of the world. After winning a small presence in the 1990 elections, far less than Asahara had predicted, the guru's anger boiled over. To him, the failure wasn't political. It was spiritual defiance by the world. Humanity had rejected salvation, so he would force it. Aum shifted from prophecy to preparation. Inside its compounds, guards now patrolled with homemade weapons. Recruits learned hand-to-hand combat. Former scientists and engineers were ordered to build secret laboratories. The cult purchased land, factories, and industrial equipment far beyond what a religious group should ever need. Asahara wanted tools for Armageddon, and his followers were ready to build them. Aum's facilities grew into a network of workshops that resembled a state-run defense project more than a religious community. Members in white lab coats designed machine parts, bullet casings, explosives, chemical processing chambers, and makeshift rocket components. Some rooms looked like research centers. Others looked like torture chambers. All were sealed from the outside world. The cult's engineers were brilliant. Many graduated from Japan's top universities, but they worked under impossible conditions, often sleep-deprived, sometimes beaten, and always monitored. Failure wasn't an option. Asahara wanted weapons that could collapse a nation. One of Aum's most disturbing innovations was turning science into a religious department. Dr. Hideo Murai, a respected physicist, became the science minister. Under him, Aum pursued technologies no cult should ever dream of: lasers, biological weapons, chemical nerve agents, computer hacking systems, and even primitive railgun concepts. It was fantasy mixed with desperation. Much of it failed. But some of it came terrifyingly close to success. The guru demanded progress. He demanded breakthrough after breakthrough, weapons capable of wiping out cities, and soon he found his first viable path. Asahara had long preached apocalypse. Now he wanted to trigger it. The concept was simple. If Aum unleashed global chaos, only the faithful would be saved. So the cult began experiments. Dark, secret, lethal experiments. First came biological agents, botulinum toxin and anthrax. They tried releasing aerosols. They tested sprays from buildings. They even sent trucks through Tokyo emitting invisible clouds. But their strains were weak or improperly cultivated. They caused no casualties. Asahara was furious. Then the cult discovered sarin, a colorless, odorless nerve agent. Fast, lethal, perfect for a group dreaming of mass death. Aum's chemists built covert laboratories to produce it. They engineered tools, refined ingredients, and rehearsed delivery systems. By 1993, they had produced tons of precursor chemicals. They were ready to test the real thing. June 27, 1994. A quiet residential neighborhood in Matsumoto, people asleep in their homes, windows open for summer air. At 10 p.m., an Aum truck parked near the district court apartments. Inside the truck was a custom-made heating device. When activated, it vaporized liquid sarin and pushed the cloud into the night. Residents soon collapsed where they stood, in their bedrooms, in their hallways beside their phones as they tried to call for help. Windows fogged with chemical residue, pets convulsed, street plants turned brown by morning. 7 people died. Hundreds were injured. But Aum watched from afar, taking notes. This wasn't the apocalypse they wanted, it was only a prototype. The perfect crime police suspected pesticide poisoning. They searched for an industrial accident. They arrested no one, and Asahara celebrated the successful test. To the cult, the Matsumoto attack proved 3 things. Sarin worked. Police were unprepared. A major attack in Tokyo could cripple the nation. Aum began preparing for the main event, the event they believed would reshape the world, the event written in Asahara's prophecies. Their holy war. Tokyo was next. Throughout 1994 and 1995, Aum mass-produced sarin, stockpiled weapons, and trained loyal members to die for the cause. Their compounds filled with gas masks, chemical tanks, and complex dispersal systems. Asahara's sermons grew darker, more urgent. He spoke of enemies closing in, conspiracies tightening, and the need to act before the government struck first. His followers believed every word. Inside the cult's secret chambers, they rehearsed missions, they built containers, they prepared for coordinated strikes, and they chose the target that would shake the world: Tokyo's subway system. By early 1995, Aum Shinrikyo had become a nation within a nation, armed, paranoid, and preparing for what they believed was the final battle of good and evil. But the Japanese government was closing in. Police were preparing massive raids on Aum facilities, and Asahara knew it. To him, the logic was simple: strike first, strike hard, strike big enough that the world would never recover. What happened next would become one of the most notorious terrorist attacks in modern history. Asahara summoned his most devoted members, men who had long since surrendered their identities, their doubts, and their humanity. In a dim underground chamber, he delivered the order: "The time of Armageddon is now. We must act before the state destroys us." Tokyo was chosen for maximum devastation. The subway lines that fed directly into Japan's political and police headquarters were selected with precision: Chiyoda Line, Hibiya Line, Marunouchi Line, all converging near the nerve center of Japan's government. The goal wasn't symbolic, it was strategic. Aum wanted to paralyze the country, derail police operations, spark chaos, and ignite the war Asahara had prophesied for years. March 20th, 1995. 5 men, 5 bags, 1 city. Tokyo's morning commute was packed. Thousands of workers pressed into trains, half awake, reading newspapers or clutching briefcases. Among them moved 5 Aum operatives carrying plastic bags wrapped in newspaper. Inside each bag was liquid sarin, one of the deadliest nerve agents on Earth. The instructions were simple: place the bag on the floor, drop it casually. Puncture it with the sharpened tip of an umbrella, step off the train, let the gas spread. One by one, they followed the script. The bags leaked, clear liquid pooled, vapors rose, passengers coughed, collapsed, froth formed at their mouths, their vision blurred. Their muscles convulsed. They tried to speak, but couldn't. They tried to breathe, but the nerves controlling their lungs were shutting down. Within minutes, chaos spiraled through the tunnels. Train operators, unaware of the invisible poison, kept driving into contaminated stations. Passengers stumbled out, collapsing on platforms as station workers rushed to help, never realizing that touching the liquid meant they were poisoning themselves. Emergency calls flooded control centers. Paramedics arrived without protective gear. Many fell unconscious while trying to rescue others. Police stations received conflicting reports: chemical spill, explosion, poison gas, unknown substance. Nobody knew what they were dealing with. The sarin continued to spread. By the time trains were finally halted, 13 people were dead, over 6,000 injured, and Tokyo was shaken to its core. The worst domestic attack in Japanese history had unfolded in less than 20 minutes. As news cameras gathered outside hospitals, Aum Shinrikyo denied everything. They issued statements of innocence, claimed persecution, blamed America, dark forces. They blamed anyone but themselves. But behind the scenes, the government was preparing its largest counter-cult operation ever. Asahara's apocalypse had begun, but not the one he imagined. 2 days after the attack, police launched a massive raid on Aum's headquarters at Kamakishiki. What they found was beyond anything they expected: chemical labs, stockpiles of precursor chemicals, gas masks, weapons, medical torture chambers, documents detailing experiments on members, plans for further attacks, and blueprints for sarin production on an industrial scale. This wasn't a fringe religious group. This was a doomsday factory, and Asahara was missing. Aum members panicked. Some attempted to flee, some destroyed evidence, some prayed. Some still believed Asahara would rise and lead them to victory. The government issued a nationwide manhunt, every airport, every port, every border crossing, but Asahara had vanished. On May 16, 1995, nearly 2 months after the attack, police returned to yet another Aum compound. At first, the search seemed routine. Then an officer noticed something strange: a thick, reinforced panel behind a bookshelf. They removed it. Then another panel. Then another. Finally, in a tiny, hidden chamber, crouched and disheveled, was the man who had declared himself Japan's messiah, Shoko Asahara. His hair matted, his robes filthy, his eyes unfocused. He muttered incoherently as police dragged him out. The most dangerous cult leader in modern history had been reduced to a fugitive in a crawlspace. The world watched the footage in shock. Japan exhaled. Even with Asahara captured, Aum remnants continued violent operations. Some members planned retaliation attacks. Others tried to free imprisoned leaders. A few went underground and remained fugitives for years. What Aum believed, they still believed. Their war was not over. Not yet. Over the next decade, Japan held one of the most extensive legal proceedings in its history. Asahara was charged with orchestrating the Tokyo subway attack, ordering the Matsumoto sarin attack, multiple kidnappings, forced confinement, torture, illegal weapons production, murders, including the Sakamoto family. The evidence was overwhelming. Former disciples testified, survivors spoke. Experts explained the unimaginable scale of Aum's weapon projects. In 2004, Asahara was sentenced to death. And eventually, after years of appeals, so were many of his top lieutenants. Aum Shinrikyo did not disappear. It splintered. The main group rebranded as Aleph. A more radical offshoot formed, Hikari no Wa. Both were monitored constantly by Japanese authorities. Both still drew followers. Both still believed in some form in Asahara's teachings. Even today, the specter of Aum lingers, a reminder that ideology mixed with fear, isolation, and charisma can create something monstrous. For the thousands injured by sarin, recovery has been a lifelong struggle. Nerve damage, vision loss, chronic pain, PTSD. Many rescuers, train workers, paramedics, civilians were poisoned simply by trying to help. Their stories are the quiet counterweight to Aum's violence, ordinary people who stepped into chaos to save strangers. On 6 July 2018, Asahara and 6 other Aum Shinrikyo members were executed by hanging. Japan's Justice Minister Yoko Kamikawa stated that the crimes plunged people, not only in Japan but in other countries as well, into deadly fear and shook society to its core.